Hello, today we will be reviewing how to request a transfer through the coordinated entry system. In this training, we will focus on where to find the transfer request form and how to submit it. First, start by navigating to the Clients tab and searching for the client's profile. Then, click on the Entry Exit tab, and this will bring you to a list of the client's project enrollments. The next step is to locate the enrollment of the program the participant is currently housed in. On the right-hand side of the enrollment, there is an interim icon. You should select this icon and then click Add Interim Review. From there, a drop-down menu will appear. Click on this menu and select CES Transfer Request Form, then click Save and Continue. The next step will depend on whether you will be submitting an internal transfer request, which is a transfer from one program to another within the same agency, or an external transfer request, which is a transfer from one agency to another agency. Let's begin with the internal transfer request form. If you would like to request a client within your agency, select the sub-assessment titled Coordinated Entry Transfer Request Form, Internal. All fields in this form must be completed in entirety for the transfer request to move forward. First, select that you understand the policy on transfer requests and are completing the correct form for your client's situation. Then, next to the requested new project box, click on the Lookup button to search for the project that you are requesting to transfer the client to. In the next box, indicate the program model of the requested project. Next, indicate the category of the transfer and whether it meets the definition of a VAWA safety transfer. VAWA is the acronym for the Violence Against Women Act. In the next section, you should share information on the reason that the participant is in need of a transfer. In the bottom section, you will write your name and email address. The very bottom section should be left blank, as this should only be completed by a member of the coordinated entry team. From here, make sure that you click Save and Exit to ensure the completed form is submitted. That is how to request an internal transfer. Next, we will review how to submit the external transfer request form. After you have added an interim review of CES transfer request form, the next step is to navigate to the coordinated entry transfer request form external subassessment. All fields in this form must be completed for the transfer request to be approved. In the top section, you should select that you understand the policy on transfer requests and are completing the correct form for your client's situation. This is also where you will add your name and contact information. Next, indicate the option the head of household selected for the client consent for data sharing. The next section contains the Housing Options Exhausted table. This section should be used to list housing pathways that have been explored outside of coordinated entry. Please select an option from the Housing Option dropdown and write some information on actions taken to try and secure other resources for the client and what the outcome was. If there were multiple housing pathways explored, you should click Save and Add Another to list additional information. Once you have finished listing all pathways explored, click Save. The next portion is the Transfer Category section, where you will list the category of transfer, whether it meets the definition of a VAWA safety transfer, and the requested program model. In the narrative section, you should write information on the reason that the participant needs or would benefit from a transfer. In the next section, you should indicate which documents you have for the household. Select yes or no for each document to indicate which documents you have already uploaded to the client's profile in HMIS. This is important as there are documentation requirements for transfer approval. The new housing provider will also likely require certain documents for the household to be successfully transferred. In the household income section, please answer each question to provide information on the participant's income or lack of income. Then, enter in the number of household members, number of adults, and number of children. Then, enter in the rent amount for their current unit. The next question asks about any sides of the city where the household is not willing to live. Please note that having specific geographic preferences may result in delays and may impact their ability to receive a housing match. If the household needs to have accessibility features in their unit or building, you should share that information in this section and be as specific as possible. Next, the form asks if the participant is required to register on the sex offender registry and whether they have a disability. In the disabilities sub-assessment, check to ensure that the participant's disability information is correct. If the information is up to date, do not make any changes to this table. If the information currently in the table has changed, then you should click Add and select the applicable disability options. You can add as many are needed by clicking Save and Add. Once you are finished entering this information, click Save. In the final section of the form, you will select whether the participant is willing to move to a new unit, whether they're willing to accept a SRO unit, and whether they are willing to lease in place. Please note that having specific preferences may result in delays and impacts the number of housing opportunities the participant could be matched to. The transfer status section should be left blank, as this should only be completed by a member of the coordinated entry team. When you have completed the form in entirety, please click Save and Exit to ensure the completed form is submitted. That is how to submit a transfer request through the coordinated entry system. Once you submit the transfer request form in HMIS, there are a few next steps in the approval process. Eligibility documentation should be uploaded to HMIS when applicable. For PSH transfers, the chronic homelessness verification packet is required. Additionally, the coordinated entry team will reach out within 2 business days to confirm receipt of the transfer request and to share next steps. The coordinated entry team will also communicate to you whether the transfer request was approved or denied. When an internal transfer request is approved, a referral to the requested new program will be generated in HMIS. When an external transfer request is approved, the household will be added to the transfer list to wait for a housing match. Finally, I will be sharing a few key takeaways. As a reminder, all fields in the transfer request form must be completed for a transfer request to be processed. Additionally, transfer approval does not guarantee participants will receive a housing match. Transfers are meant to be a last resort option, and agency staff should support participants in exploring alternative housing options. Please note that participants must be currently housed to be eligible for a transfer. If you have any questions about the transfer process, please reach out to the coordinated entry team at ces@chicagococ.org. Thank you for viewing this training on how to request a transfer through the coordinated entry system.